at the same time, these people who are like, oh, we want to ban these books. They don't say that, of course.
No, it's
But
curriculum. It's always
yeah,
curriculum.
but it's not even just that. So I don't remember if it was in Virginia. There was a state where a group was suing Barnes and Noble
Yeah.
because they had Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Mist and Fury on the young adult shelf. Now, look, I'm inclined to agree. The A Court of Thorns and Roses series is extremely sexual. I don't think it should be on the young adult shelf. I'm very glad we're finally starting to have the new adult, but that's a whole other discussion.
Right, but
So I
it's
will,
how you handle
yeah.
the
So it's like
legitimate problem. Yeah.
I will agree, A Court of Mist and Fury especially should not be on the young adult shelf. However, why are you suing Barnes and Noble when the publisher is the one who put the young adult label on it and Barnes and Noble is just putting it
That's a good
where
point.
they were told to?
That's a good point. They put the book where it was listed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they knew they were going to get headlines suing Barnes and Noble. They probably also um wouldn't have been able to get they'll probably lose because of that.
Mm-hmm. And even
but really, like, suing because a book's in the wrong section, are we really there?
yes, apparently. And it is one of those things where it's like, okay, we've had to create a new section because new adult is basically just young adult with smut.
Right.
And the characters are now between like 18 and 24. And you know what? That's probably a section that needs to exist. Because
oh, I couldn't believe some of the content in young adult books. I was like, I think the whole young adult is a marketing tactic. These are books for teenagers.
Yeah, and it's, there has been a creep where it's like, because young adult was originally like, okay, 13 to 18. Well, that's way too big a demographic at that point. So it's like we should have had new adults sooner.
Well,
So
there should have been like 13, because it's weird, because it's so 4 to 6, then 8 to 10, then just the floodgates open up for all of adolescence. And why don't we have 13 to 15? And well, okay, I know the reasons in TV, because it always used to be, if you're making something for a 12-year-old, 12-year-olds don't want to watch stuff about 12-year-olds. They want aspirational programming.
It seems like we get less of that though, because like I remember one of my big things when the Netflix She-Ra came out, and you had the people who are like, but we like the old design. Well, why are you trying to sexualize a 12-year-old? Well, she wasn't 12 in the original show, so why is she 12 here? Because why can't we give these characters an older woman to aspire to? Why does she have to be their own age?
But the answer I never got was because the fandom's toxic.
Mm-hmm.
What's sexual? What's less sexual about modern She-Ra than old She-Ra? Because Catra straddling Adora's hips in places.
Mm-hmm.
And their faces are pressed up against each other. Like, I looked at that and went, whoa, this is certainly libidinous.
But guys like looking at original She-Ra.
Okay,
that's what makes it sexual.
Pretty. We misuse these words.
Oh yeah.
And this is why I think a lot of the toxicity. If everybody could slow down and actually use words, like slow the fuck down, have conversations like we have. Pretty is not sexual, and visually appealing is not sexual.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything sexual about the original She-Ra design.
No.
I don't understand. This is one of these things that somebody said it and someone repeated it and it became this rallying cry. And nobody stopped to test the original assertion.
Well, I mean, it seems like anytime a female character has boobs, That's sexual.
She-Ra was not terribly well endowed, though.
No, but she had boobs. They are there.
Yeah, but she was a B cup.
Yeah, but they were there.
Okay,
As near
but
as I can
again,
tell, as
but
near as I can
again,
tell, that's it. Is
I
it's like
I guess people don't, well, okay, there's lesbian porn made for lesbians, and then there's lesbian porn made for straight dudes.
mhm,
And I guess the people who insist that boobs equals sexualized has never watched the lesbian porn made for lesbians.
probably not.
Because there's a lot of the itty bitty committee in those things. I mean, fetish or alternative modeling, a major strata of that is because they want to be able to put the duct tape on the
Mhm.
nipples and walk around in just like a mesh shirt,
Yeah.
this sort of goth fetish model thing. And you can't do that when you're a C or above.
Nope.
So there's a lot of A cups in that. And it's not, I would even argue that Jessica Rabbit is based on characters that were seen as, she's an homage to the
Mhm.
20s.
And it's hard to I haven't found words yet to explain the depth of I'm not bad, I'm
I'm
just
just
drawn
drawn
that
that way.
way.
That Jessica Rabbit is all about the world judging a book by its cover. She is a
Mhm.
deconstruction of the femme fatale trope.
Mhm.
And she is a character whose insides do not match her outsides, which is, I
Mhm.
think, where the asexual
And
person,
that's why I say she's one of the best developed characters.
pardon the pun. But okay, so Jessica, I think we're that person who said she's ace. What she actually means is Jessica is chaste.
Mhm.
She's married. Well, okay, Patty Cake was supposed to be tune fetish, you know, but
Let's go home, Roger. I'll bake you a carrot cake.
right,
Yeah, that's chaste.
right. But chastity is not never have sex.
I know.
Chastity is you sleep with your husband and that's it. Jessica is chaste. She's loyal. She's a
Mhm.
one-man woman. That's not asexual.
Yeah.
And anybody who puts Jessica Rabbit into the ace category because of various things is falling prey to the virgin whore dichotomy that she was designed to deconstruct.
Yeah.
And, Betty Boop is wearing flapper gear. And it's just, she has a giant head.
Yeah.
But flapper gear was considered, oh, gasp at the time.
She's like the prototypical teenager,
Yeah. I
which
mean,
is
like Jessica Rabbit's a vamp.
mhm.
I'll give her that. But I mean, Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out
80, not 89. I think it was like, oh
um
gosh,
because I saw that movie in theaters because I remember my
88.
mother laughing hysterically about all the Jessica Rabbit stuff. 1988. So I would have been 10,
Mhm.
9 or 10. And I saw that movie as a 10-year-old. And yes, there were certain things that went over my head. Did I
Mhm.
recognize Jessica as a beautiful woman? Yeah.
Yes.
Did people make comments about her being sexy? Yes. Did I have any sexual response there?
No.
No. I was not old enough. And that's important because anybody who's watched my Twitch stream knows, yeah, I have that response now. It's, and that is this whole thing. Let's face it, it's not about kids. It's about the fandom being uncomfortable with their bodies and uncomfortable with their sexuality and wanting to neuter all this stuff so they don't have to think about it. That's
Mhm.
that's part of the thing about the whole Steven Universe thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I see the people, um, you know, Anita Sarkeesian is all, don't sexualize everything. And then she's got marriage fantasy fan art of Captain Pike. Like, what? Why? And this is where they're in this weird stunt, maybe reverted. I don't know. I need to find a better word than stunted, because people are going to get upset at that word and not listen to me. But regression is part of healing the inner child.
Mm-hmm.
People have to regress so they can feel safe, so they can heal certain wounds from that period, and then learn how to self-soothe and move forward as more fully formed adults.
Mm-hmm.
Psychologically, that these nostalgia properties and these fandom things can serve a constructive purpose in that. The problem is when people want, I'm trying to figure out people want it only for their kind of people and nobody else can have it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what's happening in fandom right now. It's, oh, sexualizing women is bad, but ooh, Daddy Pascal. The fuck?
Mm. Oh God, yeah,
And I mean,
no.
the counter of that is, unless a woman has massive boobs, she's not sexy. Like that. Oh, I'm gonna be blunt. Fuck off with that, because again, I grew up in the 90s where massive boobs just meant you were fat.
Yeah.
Sexy was waifs. You cannot say, oh, an entire portion of the population is just ugly or not sexually appealing. That is just not how humans work.
No.
I'm so damn, and it's that, like I pointed out, it's not just one portion of fandom. That's the dark side, pardon the pun, of the regress state. It's the boys girls are icky state, because
Yeah.
people are regressing to a state where they're about 8 to 10 years old.
And I think part of it also comes because you have animation stories like Steven Universe and Netflix She-Ra, who they appeal to kids, but they have enough depth that young adults can get into them.
Right.
Then adult entertainment is really gritty and depressing.
And people don't like it and they choke it down. I mean, the freaking the reactions to the Last of Us HBO show, I was like, this is dark watching.
And we need more content for adults that isn't miserable and that isn't
Yes.
dark and that
Well,
isn't, oh my God, the world sucks.
also,
We need
hear me out, audience, on this one.
Mhm.
Okay, finish your thought, and then I'll
we need something that will take the ideas that can be colorful and bright and still deal with the contrast of the fact that Velma tried to do a panic attack and they dealt with it by Daphne kissing Velma, whereas at the same time Puss in Boots the Last Wish came out and they dealt with a panic attack properly. We need stories that can take these mature ideas and present them in a mature way while also being written for adults with that kind of maturity, so we don't get people who are like, oh, I don't want to watch the dark gritty adult stuff, so I'm just going to stay with the kid stuff, which does keep their mentality trapped there.
Yeah,
because they need something to continue bringing them into adulthood so that they can grapple more complex subjects.
Yeah, but it also comes into, and then that ties into what I was going to say. Well, we have a really challenging, really challenging relationship right now with hope. And that's where the whole black pill thing comes in. And that's why, yeah, we'll have to do the whole, that whole thing next. I think we can do it now. But
Okay.
so There's black pill for men. There's black pill for women. Let's face it. And black pill for women includes the hot mess programming.
Yeah.
But the thing that is the defining characteristic of black pillars is they have given up hope. And you see a lot of this reflected in so-called adult programming. They only see it as quote unquote realistic if they are worlds without hope.
Yeah.
And The Last of Us is a shining example. It finally clicked with me recently, the issues I have with the way that series is developed. Because what's the point of the whole thing of everybody fighting for a cure in the first story if humanity's doomed?
Mm-hmm.
If this is the last chapter of the human race, who cares? There's gotta be at least a chance that humanity can survive the zombie apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And The Walking Dead changed that. It's like, oh no, this is it. Everybody's infected. So this is the last days of the human race. I need something different than that. I don't want that to be the adult mindset, because that's what quite frankly led to the 60s counterculture, this idea that adulthood was supposed to be miserable and just you're a cog in the machine and you live to work, and people rebel against that. People need hope.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't blame people for watching kids programming when adult programming is so nihilistic. But then
Yeah.
they get into programming intended for children. And Star Wars, I don't know what to think. I mean, Andor is supposed to be the adult Star Wars, and I don't see it. I think that Star Wars is an example of something that ideally should be all ages.
Mm-hmm.
Much like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that adults see it on a different level than kids do. You're
Yeah.
not allowed to do that kind of stuff anymore, because the minute you do all ages, you're sexualizing children. No, you're not. Kids can't comprehend things on that level. What's wrong with you that you think a child can understand these innuendos?
I've seen people on YouTube who are like, we were brainwashed, and these cartoons with sexual jokes, they were grooming us. And I'm like,
No,
no.
that was to keep dads going to the movies.
Yeah. And
that's what they're for.
And I just, it's so frustrating because I see this so many people, especially on YouTubers. There's these young women who are probably in their early to mid 20s who they do these videos that are all, oh, we were groomed by the cartoons we watched, or
whoa, wait, were these people abused?
Who knows?
Okay, because grooming is setting, it's creating the conditions where abuse can happen and the kid's not going to tell anyone. So if these women weren't abused, they weren't groomed.
Mm-hmm.
Grooming is behavior with a specific purpose in mind. I'm so sick of this.
Also, something I've discovered now that I'm around more adults is it's like sex is such a common discussion.
Oh, yeah.
And it's such a big part of just conversations and jokes and so many things. And it's like, maybe putting some jokes in there and kids stuff isn't bad because it helps create context.
I mean, do kids understand Timon and the Lion King dress and drag and do the hula?
No.
I mean, that's just silly. Timon's being silly. That's not, it's sexual. It's absurd.
No.
I mean, I remember there was a thing about the Lion King that the at the time it came out, the death of Mufasa was too scary for kids, that parents should have been warned. Parents weren't warned. all the same stuff they're doing now. But they said that the "Can You Feel the Love Tonight" sequence was too sexy. And they said the same thing about Lady and the Tramp. That the expressions that they're giving each other while they're pushing the meatballs at each other were too sexual.
Okay, I can kind of see Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Because there's literal wrestling and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
but this
But
was
Lady
back when
and
the
the
movie
Tramp?
came up, Lady and the Tramp. And they totally miss Robin Hood, which was the awakening of furries
Oh,
in
oh,
popular culture.
even that movie, not even furry. It's just, I'm pretty sure I had a bit of a first stage sexual awakening from Love Goes On.
Well, I mean, Robin Hood's very Errol Flynn.
Mhm.
And you can't depict the whole Errol Flynn thing unless there's a certain sexiness is not sexual.
Mhm.
Like,
And I think that's something a lot of people lose the distinction
well, yeah,
is, yeah, because it's, and that is Jessica Rabbit.
yes,
It's, she is sexy. She flaunts it. She uses it for her work, clearly.
right.
But that doesn't mean she is inherently sexual.
And you know what?
And
That was what happened to me when I was doing TV, that people thought a lot of things about me that weren't true because of the
mhm,
job I did.
yeah.
And Jessica Rabbit was very much an influence in terms, because I'm like, what's a thing that can be fun instead of just tawdry?
Mhm.
And that was it.
And
And
she straddles that line so well.
yeah, I thought that movie was great as a kid. And I thought that, I mean, what a great character introduction, like straight up femme fatale. And then you find out, no, she's actually competent and loyal and a good, a loyal wife, and she can take care of herself, and she comes prepared, and guys try to cop a feel and get their hand caught in a bear trap. There's a lot of good with Jessica that's getting thrown out in how she looks.
Yeah, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
And isn't that exactly the opposite of what we're trying to teach girls, is that people should respect you no matter how you look? And I
No,
do,
we have to put Jessica Rabbit in a trench coat and she has to cover up and be ashamed.
I do think we got to wrap soon, but I do think there's
Yeah,
been a boomerang effect on men, and I think we'll get into this in the next topic.
I think so.
I think that men, I hear so many men, well, if you don't, if you're not the 666, then women aren't interested in you. And there's so much evidence that that's not true, but I think because the media they consume, they are equating the worth of women with appearance, and it's boomeranging back around on them.
Mhm.
That, okay, I'm having these reactions to this woman. Women are, ironically, women are people. If I treat women this way, I can expect no better. But it's not true. And I mean, just don't stink, and you'll find somebody who, as long as you work on being considerate and accountable. I think we really need to start using the word accountable instead of strong. Because
I think so.
as long as you're accountable for your behavior, and as long as you're willing to work with people, as you and I both know, women don't expect perfection, but women have standards.
Mhm.
And even Jordan Peterson says women should have standards. So,
And you're agreeing with Jordan Peterson on something.
well, I said even because, this is not the interesting thing is that that's the part of his stuff that I think a lot of his followers miss. He's basically saying that for men, you have to do all this stuff because, you want you want to couple off.
Hmm.
And I don't think anybody should do that. I think you can't be part of a couple unless you're right with yourself first. And that doesn't mean you're completely confident.
No, but
No.
if you're going to be a good partner for someone, you need to reach a point where you're mentally strong enough and your own shit is dealt with enough that you can support them
Well, and what it
when
is
stuff
to,
happens.
yeah, conflict's going to happen.
Yeah.
And conflict happens in life, but conflict in close relationships happens.
Oh God, yes.
And you have to have a core that you know who you are, what you'll accept, what is over the line, so that you can have conflicts with people and it doesn't feel like you're dying.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell what is just a disagreement and what is abusive, because everything that feels bad isn't abuse and everything that
Yes.
feels good isn't healthy. So you can't get into a relationship unless, like, that's going to succeed, unless you may not 100% like yourself. I don't think anybody does. But you do have to know yourself
Mm-hmm.
and stop making excuses for yourself and work with, there are certain things that I guess a person, if they did a ton, maybe they could change certain aspects of their character. But there are some things that just, this is a person is. It's not
Mm-hmm.
fair to ask them to change this much.
Yeah.
And we're in a society that treats certain characteristics as good and certain characteristics as bad, instead of, these are elements of people. There are things about these qualities that are excellent in moderation.
Mm-hmm.
Too much bravery is stupidity, too much confidence is narcissism, and too much assertiveness, you're pushing people around.
Yeah.
And I just think that so many of these stories now, you notice the more toxic a fandom gets, the more the stories in the content become, they're completely straight lines. There's no real setbacks, but some characters die along the way.
I mean, that certainly fits Steven Universe.
Well, Game of Thrones as well.
Well, also, like Steven Universe is kind of my quintessential example of a toxic fandom, because for those who don't know, there was a situation where an artist drew a particular character as thinner than she was in the show, which ironically that wasn't even the character's true appearance.
Right.
But we didn't know that at the time. So they drew her too thin, according to the fandom. And
Freak
they,
out.
she received so much vitriol and abuse
Yeah, that
that
was
she wound up
insane.
in the she attempted suicide, and she wound up in the hospital, and it still didn't stop. And that's why, that when I think toxic fandom, that's the example I always come back to, is because they were so stuck on, this is, it's fat representation, it's black, it's Latino, it's all these, well, Latin, sorry.
Yeah.
It's this representation. So
Right.
how dare you do anything I don't like?
Well, and that's, representation of a people means sometimes they're going to do things you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think Steven Universe is probably the gold standard for toxic fandom, because that one just, there's nothing terribly controversial in the show itself. The show is soft.
Yeah.
And that
It,
fandom, it's
except for creating, space Hitler and then forgiving them with
well, that
no
that's that
consequences.
well, that's sort of kind to the point of stupid
Yeah.
quality that show has. Yes, it's that idea that everybody can be redeemed. It's borrowing from that very 70s Star Wars peace love.
Yeah.
And
It is one of those things where it's like, okay, you wanted to tell an epic story, but you wanted a soft story. Those two things aren't always compatible.
it's very hard. And I
Yeah.
do think that you're right. And this is something I've seen a lot. Fandoms, they get so caught up that they don't recognize when you guys are, remember I said it's poison.
Mm-hmm.
The recent example was the whole Hogwarts Legacy thing.
Mm-hmm.
They set the argument back, and they poisoned all of gaming with their bullshit, because now spoilers are an effective form of political protest. And now, of course, what happened? They didn't like Aloy, the reveal in the Horizon DLC, so people spoiled it. And that was the other side, right? That was, they have Aloy kiss a girl in the DLC. Sorry, people who hate spoilers, but it's relevant here.
Oh,
And
I'm so surprised. I'm so
well,
shocked.
it's funny because I was half joking, but when I played Forbidden West, I was like, she's way more animated around this geeky girl than she is in any of the guys. She's kind of, please stop giving me this kind of attention around guys. And I'm like, yeah, Aloy's into that girl. And so it didn't come out of nowhere. I thought it's there. It wasn't a sudden change in the character. And they showed that the character she was cloned from was a lesbian. So, okay, this should not be surprising. And so people just went ahead and spoiled that as retribution, because people spoiled Harry Potter for people, but Hogwarts Legacy, because, oh, if you like this game, you must hate trans people. And don't you know we're dying? And don't you know this? And I mean, I've talked earlier in this, I have skin in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I got called a bad ally because I was like, no, I'm not going to disown someone because they played Hogwarts Legacy. I don't care whether they play a game. I care whether they, if it comes down to it, are you going to support when they come after people's rights? Because that's very real. And I was called a bad ally. And I'm like, I am not a guest in this fucking club. And people just assume things about people. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not like they couldn't have checked, and it's not like they couldn't have asked. They violated all their own talking points because they were hurt and they were angry and they stopped thinking. And all the people who should have done what I did and went, no, guys, this is too far. They were so afraid of getting turned on. They didn't want to lose their clout, that it went nuts. And and this happens in everything. People get dumb, and you have to pick up and keep going. It's not the end of the road, but it was toxic. It poisoned the entire gaming environment because people behave so badly.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that I was quoted in the Washington Post over that is absurd. And when you've got a discussion that is so nuclear that we can't have a discussion about not what the end goal is, but how to go about it, that's toxic. That's poison.
Yeah.
And there's a reason they say poison is a coward's weapon. That people have got to stop. If you just want, if it's some regular person, I don't care. people behave badly. If somebody's just upset and they say something awful, all right, don't do it again. But when
Yep.
someone claims to be an advocate or an activist and they start, you don't get to suddenly be a regular person who has an emotional reaction when you're claiming to speak for a group. You are now responsible for the depiction of that entire group, and no one is demanding that you do it. So behave accordingly. And too many of these groups, they claim politics when they think it'll make what they say have more weight, and then they immediately back off to, I'm just stating my opinion. No, it's not. Saying you're a bad person for playing this game is not just having an opinion, it's an accusation.
Yeah.
And that, I think that if you're wondering if you're being toxic, maybe this is a good place to stop. If you're wondering if you're being toxic, Song, is this a good test? Am I stating an opinion, or am I accusing people of thought crimes for not agreeing with me? You know, it's
I
one
don't
thing to
know if
say,
enough people have the self-awareness
well, that's the
to answer
thing,
that
though.
honestly, but yes.
You can check whether what you said is framed as an accusation. This
Yeah.
is why I'm so picky about, I feel that you're a bad person is not an I feel statement. If someone wants to say, I feel really uncomfortable when people I know play this game,
Mm-hmm.
that is honest and fair and valid. That is not the same as you're a bad person. That's an accusation. Of course, a person's going to go, what? No, I'm not. I'm not just because you say I am.
Yeah.
It, you know, and that's the difference. Speak from your position. There's a big difference on the other side between saying, I felt really uncomfortable watching this show, She-Hulk, for instance, and
Mm-hmm.
they hate the fans. One is your emotions. No one knows what you were feeling at the time but you. The other is an accusation of intent that you can't prove. And I really think all the dialogue would get so much better if people could just stick to what they could prove instead of bringing up all these implications and intentions. And now the idea that something is implied is an inherently subjective observation. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the Gina Carano was canceled for an implication that people mind read into what she intended with that post that referenced the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
Now they'd been after her for a while. That was an example of another person being driven insane by the internet.
Yeah.
But I have no way of knowing. I take her at her word when she says why she put that up. She had no intention of comparing conservatives to Jewish people. She just wanted to say, hey, this happens. You know, we don't start with violence. We start by demonizing other people.
Which and like I I think it was a very legitimate point.
Well, it gains me nothing to not believe her,
Mm-hmm.
because you can appeal to that. You know, when you take someone at their word and you play by their rules and go, all right, yes, absolutely. I want you to see the other side of this. Please, can you walk with me for a bit and see the other side to your very valid point? And I think she was working with a guy who had a trans sister. That says something. And he was open about that.
Mm-hmm.
And people have to realize, this is going to be a really harsh term, but I stand by it. People who've grown up in conservative circles have been brainwashed by
Oh,
the powers that
absolutely.
be. There
Oh,
is
absolutely.
brainwashing going on there. They sincerely believe that the world is out to get them. It does nothing to demand that they just change overnight. They're all the fucking Winter Soldier.
And the people I see who are like, no, your parents should understand. They shouldn't do this. It's like this is something that they've been taught since they were children. This is something that has the backing of God
Yes.
in their minds. You can't expect them to just get over that.
And it's not just the parents. It's
No.
every social structure they rely on to stay alive.
Yeah. Well, I see stories of people who are like, oh, well, I'm gay and my Christian parents have come around to it, yada yada, but they're upset that, like, I'm saying my mom can't wear a dress to my wedding because they forced me to wear dresses as a kid. And I'm like, well, one, you're not helping. Two, they're doing their best. People, three, calm down. Again, they're doing their best because it's really not easy to get out of that.
It's
And
it's because, I mean, I think that's why people missed why Falcon and Winter Soldier was so great, because a big complaint was, well, Bucky doesn't evolve very much. And that's, yes, he's stuck, because that's what happens with people when they come out of a brainwashing program. They are so racked with guilt about what they did because of that brainwashing that it takes them a while. Healing doesn't happen on a convenient timeline. And that, there's an example of something you were saying that I know this is going to piss people off. I'm going to do it anyway. And I thought that I want more of that show, and I don't think we're going to get it. I hope Thunderbolts continues that story, because you show the difference between Sam, a guy who, yes, he has a lot of, systemic headwinds. He's a black man in America. They show why that matters. So it's fair to comment that it was maybe a little heavy-handed. I don't know. I gave them that because I got where they were trying to go with the story. And then you've got Bucky, who is super strong. He has superpowers. Sam doesn't. But Sam has people. Sam has a community. Bucky doesn't. And so one of them can grow and one of them is stuck. And to me, that's the whole point of the show.
Yeah.
You can't feel loved in therapy.
And it's, the interesting thing about both WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier is Wanda and Bucky both kind of fall through the cracks. Because I remember watching WandaVision and going, specifically for me, it was, where is Clint? Like, I understand Clint has a family and shit went down, but like,
well, she's actively keeping people out.
Yeah, but it's like, before that, I'm like, so no one was keeping an eye on this nuclear bomb who just lost everything?
Oh, the way they handled Wanda Maximoff in Avengers is that's going to come up in the feminism discussion, I can tell. So let's stick a pin in there, because that's cracking up a whole thing. So let's wrap.
Yeah, my mom and I are going to see Kiki's Delivery Service for Geek League Fest, so awesome. I've got to head out.
Enjoy. Yes. So, and I think Mary Jess has a concert that I'm going to go to. So, nice. So this has been Two Women Talking. Songs book, Calidus Chronicles Volume 1 is available through Barnes and Noble and Amazon. But also, if you just want to kick, I have a Ko-fi, Song has a Ko-fi. Kick us a few bucks if you like what you hear. Every little bit helps. It's, nothing is a greater vote of confidence in a creator than money.
This is very true.
If you like, kick it away. I'll put in, I hate putting a million links in a description box, but we'll figure something out. And we'll be back next time talking about feminism. We're just going to go down feminism, depiction of women in the world.
Oh boy.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.